Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Sibongirezi Amba. Top stories. Ombudsman probe finds over 70% resources for COVID-19 innovations spent on staff allowances. Parties in Dr. Mpinganjira bribery case given 5 days to make submissions if the accused has a case to answer. Speaker Kwagwanji appeals for psychosocial support for survivors of gender-based violence in the country. In sports news, Farm COVID-19 Task Force wants to withdraw non-watching games physically if preventive measures are disregarded. Now the news in detail. President Lazarus Chakwera is back in the country after attending a day-long Southern African Development Committee SADC Extraordinary Troika Summit of the Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation in Gaborone, Botswana. Well, upon arrival at Gaborone Airport, Malawi Airlines employees on a flight that flown President Lazarus Chakwera were denied to disembark from the plane after failing to produce COVID-19 certificates as required in that country. Malawi Airlines spokesperson Joseph Josiah confirmed to us that the employees were 7 employees, including 4 cabin crew, an engineer, and 2 pilots. Findings of an investigation by the Ombudsman has found that over 70% of public resources made available for use in interventions on COVID-19 were spending allowances and not the actual interventions. Ombudsman Martha Chizuma says it is not justifiable that expenditure on allowances should be high on the agenda during an emergency such as the COVID-19. Chizuma says our investigation looked at lack of accountability, transparency, monitoring and abuse of public funds in the management of the resources. Western Gura has more.
Since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, issues of allowances has taken center stage both in social and mainline media. These factors, including a video clip that went viral showing some cabinet ministers discussing allowances, prompted the Office of the Ombudsman to launch an investigation. Friday, Ombudsman Martha Chizuma has released a report titled Misplaced Priorities that has exposed that public officers used 78% of the 332,659,196 kwacha that the coordination cluster alone was given for its operations. She said that the officers received unjustifiable amounts in allowances, transport, meal and phone call costs, with a single meal costing as high as 40,000 kwacha.
Overall, the findings are not giving a very good picture on the use of the funds that came towards the coordination cluster, which had DOTMA and OPC. Because at the end of the day, the picture that you are getting is that 80% of the funds that was meant for the coordination cluster was used for allowances. And that's why we are saying it's a question of misplaced priorities for the country, that the large chunk of the money should be used for the allowances. And you find that within that, you find some abuse of the allowances, you find some unjustified allowances, you find some incidents of laxity on the part of some public officers in as far as following up on these allowances is concerned.
DOTMA's Director of Response, Dyson Nkoma, has said he needs time to go through the report.
We will sit down and then look at the report in detail and then get what is in the report. Then we will be able to give a little bit more detail from the department.
The report has thus recommended that, among other things, the officers involved should pay back the money. For Zodiak in Lilongwe, this is Western Guta reporting.
The High Court in Blantyre has given parties in the bribery case involving business tycoon Dr. Thompson Mpinganjira 5 days to make submissions before a court determination if the accused has a case to answer. Friday morning, the Anti-Corruption Bureau continued to parade witnesses. In the witness box was Justice Ivy Kamanga, who was cross-examined by Dr. Mpinganjira's attorney, Patrice Nkono. Alfred Guda was at the court.
The state closed its prosecution after parading 6 witnesses. Justice Ivy Kamanga and the Anti-Corruption Bureau Director of Investigations, Danny Mponda, were the last to testify. One of Dr. Mpinganjira's lawyers, Patrice Nkono, earlier questioned why the judges failed to report within 48 hours as per the dictates of the law on reporting corruption. Justice Kamanga clarified that their decision to delay reporting the attempted bribery allegations was because of the nature of the presidential election case, arguing that doing so at that time could have resulted in chaos. Meanwhile, Anti-Corruption Bureau Director General Renek Maremba is confident a case has been established against the defendant, Dr. Tom Pinganjira.
We are confident with the case that we have presented in court through the 6 witnesses that we paraded, and from now we'll go back and do our submissions of case to answer. The defense will be preparing submissions of no case to answer.
One of Dr. Pinganjira's lawyers, Patrice Nkhani, however, thinks otherwise.
The judge says we should do that within 5 days. That's not easy for a case like this. We've heard a lot of evidence. You remember we even have a whole transcript which we intend to go through. But the judge says do that within 5 days. We probably have no choice but to try and do that within the time that the judge has set.
The court is expected to deliver its verdict on whether Dr. Pinganjira has a case to answer or not after presentation of submissions by the parties involved in the case. Dr. Tom Pinganjira is being accused of allegedly offering an unspecified amount of money to a panel of 5 judges of the Constitutional Court with the aim of circumventing justice during the trial of the presidential election case. For Zodiak in Blantyre, this is Alfred Guta.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Catherine Gutani-Hara, has appealed to stakeholders to seriously look into psychosocial support for survivors of gender-based violence in the country. Gutani-Hara was speaking during a high-level meeting organized by Women Judges Association of Malawi in Lilongwe to discuss ways of dealing with gender-based violence. UN country representative Maria Jose Torres says Malawi should improve on funding the fight and provide safety nets for survivors. John Pokayuna attended the briefing. During a national high-level meeting organized by Women Judges Association of Malawi, Speaker of the National Assembly, Catherine Gutani-Hara, observed ignoring the life of victims of gender-based violence is becoming the order of the day as much focus has been put on access to justice. Hara said victims are more undignified when they report authorities who mostly play the accuser role. To deal with this, Gutani-Hara appeals to stakeholders to seriously look into psychosocial support issues for survivors of gender-based violence in the country.
We have all been concentrating on making sure that those that have been raped, abused, defiled should get justice. But we are not thinking beyond the justice. Once they get the justice, we need also to be looking at how they survive in the community, how they survive in the school. For example, you have a girl child who has been raped or abused or indeed defiled by her teacher. How does she go back to the same school? Now you're talking of somebody who is in the poor villages of Chitipa, where the only access to a school is probably just that particular school. She has no alternatives. How are we going to be treating children like that? Because it's not going to be easy for that child to go back to school and still feel safe. And in the process, what is going to be compromised is her education. Now, I was appealing to us because in here we had the executive arm of government, the judiciary, and ourselves as a legislature to look at issues of survival of these child rape, those that have been raped or women that have been abused.
UN country representative Maria Jose Torres suggests Malawi should improve on funding to the fight and provide safety nets for survivors.
Yes, indeed, the high-level discussion on gender laws and gaps is bringing together where are the gaps if we want to really provide assistance to victims and survivors of gender violence. I mean, considering that we have sometimes very young girls, sometimes boys, I have to say, that have been affected, and also women, we need to consider that it's important to bring perpetrators to justice, but it's equally important to work with the victims and the survivors, so they need to be properly counseled.
Representing the women judges, Justice Jean Kaira admitted there are gaps and challenges in the justice delivery system, hence the involvement of all stakeholders to deal with the vice. The high-level meeting drew attendance from the executive arm of government, legislature, the judiciary and civil society to discuss gaps and challenges in the existing gender laws and find ways of dealing with gender-based violence in the country. Meanwhile, Judge Fiona Mwali, who led the UN Spotlight Initiative started to identify challenges the fight against gender-based violence is facing, say the country has good laws to assist in dealing with gender-based violence cases, but implementation is a problem. She told Zodiak that insufficient resources ranging from human resource and space is another challenge affecting the cause.
A number of challenges have been found after careful research under the Spotlight Initiative by UN Women. So basically, we have a lot of progressive laws. The biggest problem is implementation. So whilst the laws provide for certain measures to be taken, whilst they provide for certain rights, implementation is very difficult. And this has been largely because of knowledge gaps. People don't know. Even those duty bearers who are supposed to be implementing the laws, they don't know what they're supposed to do. There are also capacity gaps in terms of human personnel. We don't have enough police officers. We don't have enough social welfare officers. We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough magistrates. So there are all sorts of constraints, even courtroom structures and structures where women who have been victimized can go and find shelter when they're running away from abuse. We don't have those. Other gaps are gaps within the laws themselves. There are certain laws that don't criminalize certain things. So, for instance, we have the Gender Equality Act that tells us that harmful practices are against the law, but it doesn't tell us what particular harmful practices specifically. So people are getting away because they are falling through the cracks. There are also instances where, for instance, the offense of rape, it's only committed against a woman. You cannot rape a man. So, there are those gender gaps. There are also gaps in terms of some of the penalties are not high enough. And sometimes the offenses are not treated as very serious offenses within the law itself.
To agriculture issues, the Made in Affordable Input Program continues to be dodged by challenges that have forced people to spend nights at selling points. The farmers we are speaking to are worried that failure to access the inputs on time will affect production. Our Daniel Mibawa visited some selling points on the outskirts of Lilongwe. Do have a look.
A few minutes after 10 p.m. and I got out, intrigued by the numerous stories and reports that we have been receiving about women, children, men spending nights at various places or at various stations that are supplying farm inputs, cheap farm inputs. This new program run by the Chakwera administration got around a number of places, selling points in Lilongwe, particularly on the outskirts of Lilongwe. And I'm speaking to you now from Mpingu, just on the outskirts of Lilongwe, on the Mchinji Road. I found scores of women that are spending their night here. Most of these have been here for over 1 week now. Days are going by without securing the farm inputs. They are worried. They say when President Chakwera and Vice President Saulos Chilima promised them they will get cheap fertilizer at 4,950 kwacha, they did not indicate, they did not tell them they shall have to wait for weeks, or they shall have to sleep at selling points for weeks on end to secure that cheap fertilizer. I've been hearing a number of stories from women that are sleeping here, men that are here, and maybe let's hear some of their stories.
I've been sleeping here for a week now. When fertilizer comes, it is vendors that deplete suppliers. We think they bribe the depot managers. We have children, the elderly, all sleeping in the open. We cannot go home to sleep because it will mean we will not stand a chance the next day. We appeal for help to access the fertilizer.
I think the issue is that centers are very few and therefore people are coming from far places to camp in one place. We've heard concerns in some selling points, people are bribing owners, but we haven't seen that here. We're just too many looking for the fertilizer. I think Chakwera is fulfilling his campaign promise. It's just the administration that is poor. We're just too many looking for fertilizer.
Those are some of the stories that I am getting tonight from beneficiaries or would-be beneficiaries of the Affordable Input Program that's being run by the government, but it's now being marred by numerous problems ranging from network issues, shortage of supplies, to vendors hijacking the procurement. At some selling points, people are having to procure or buy underweighing fertilizers. Now, I must indicate here what's so interesting in this whole program is the fact that government is in the current budget, the 2020 to 2021 budget, spending a whopping 160.2 billion Malawi kwacha. Yes, 160.2 billion Malawi kwacha allocated in the budget for the AIP, which is the flagship program of the Chakwera or the Tonse administration. They were so loud about it in the campaign. The Minister of Agriculture, Robin Lowe, has tried to speak in defense of what his ministry is doing about these numerous challenges we found out here. He indicated earlier that the network issues and all other overarching issues that are facing or dogging this program will end last Saturday, but that is not the case. We can say here that the minister lied because the network issues persist.
Network challenge in some areas, the system requires that transaction are done where there is network. However, it is reported that there is a slow network in some areas, which is leading to slowness in completion, redeeming transaction of farm inputs. I would like to report that my ministry is working tirelessly with the Ministry of Information to ensure that the problem is resolved once and for all.
And they are afraid if they access the farm inputs late, it won't mean anything because they must go along with time. Time is of the essence. They hope government, the president, the vice president, with the enthusiasm they promised the AIP, they will do all they can to ensure the people that I've been speaking to here, the people sleeping at selling points, have easy access to the inputs. My name is Daniel Mibawa.
Later, Minister of Agriculture Robin Lowe addressed the media in Irongwe, where he indicated that efforts to empower local companies in supply of fertilizer under the Affordable Input Program has contributed to challenges in accessing the commodity as some of the suppliers have capacity gaps. The minister, however, said that this is being addressed as a number of companies are performing impressively, which has enabled provision of 68% of farm inputs to selling points across the country. Meanwhile, the ministry says selling points of the inputs will be operating from 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. to ease congestion. And you're watching news on Zodiac. We'll be right back shortly. Stand by.
If there's one thing that all soaps do, it's wash. From buckets to basins, bathrooms to streams, and everything in between.
All soaps wash.
Yes, but Protex is different. Its reinvented formula with flaxseed oil boosts your skin's natural anti-germ defenses by 10 times more, protecting you against 99.9% of germs. So what keeps us healthy?
Protex!
Good health starts here.
For a better tomorrow, don't forget to do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate every night.
Kupeza zinthu zabwino sikulira kukhala ndi chuma koma kuzindikira chinsinsi. Pamene Yohane anatawanika kufuna kumukomedwetsa tango, Yakobe anapeza chinsinsi cha tango kudzera pa lisiti la katundu amene anagula tango. Tango amagwiritsa ntchito zonse zopangidwa ndi Purity Sanitary Products, monga Purity wosambira mthupi, Purity wosambira m'manja, Purity wodzola mthupi, komanso Purity wotsukira mbale ndi mapoto. patangotha sabata imodzi Yakobe akugwiritsa ntchito zopangidwa ndi Purity Sanitary Products. Yakobe adatenga mtima wa Tango chifukwa chooneka bwino. Wonekani bwino pogwiritsa ntchito Purity Sanitary Products.
The world's biggest sales promotion just got bigger. ShopRite brings you the biggest savings event of the year with not just one, but 5 days of Black Friday. Trust always.
Welcome back. You're with me, Sibongile Ziambo. The headlines as we continue the news. Ombudsman probe finds over 70% resources for COVID-19 intervention spent on staff allowances. Parties in Dr. Mpinganjira's bribery case given 5 days to make submissions if the accused has a case to answer. Speaker Godani Hara appeals for psychosocial support for survivors of gender-based violence in the country. In sports news, Farm COVID-19 Task Force warns to withdraw not watching games physically if preventive measures are disregarded. Moving on, government admits that buyers continue ripping off profits for tobacco growers, hence the need to review tobacco selling prices. Agriculture Minister told a tobacco industry conference in Lilongwe that tobacco farmers are failing to make tangible investment with tobacco earnings due to low prices offered in tobacco markets. And on his part, Tobacco Commission Board Chair Harry Mkandawire said the anti-smoking campaign remains one of the biggest challenges affecting the sector.
We are mindful about the anti-smoking robbery that is taking place out there. We need to address issues like child labor and the like. But at the same time, we would like to revisit the forest levy. This amount of money can go a long way to sustain the industry. As it is now, nobody knows what that money does. Now it's an appeal to government that, hey, it's about time we make use of this money. All stakeholders should be able to see that this money has got value, the intended value. So there are several issues that we are revisiting. We're doing promotions like going to Egypt sometime next first week of December. I'll be going to Egypt, South Africa and the like to do the promotions to make sure that we get our traditional buyers back. For example, we have got BAT. They stopped buying. Now we want to go and send an appeal to them to say, why don't you come back? The environment has changed. So there's several issues that we're looking at.
The row between smallholder tea growers and their board, Tuchila Tea Association, continues with the farmers accusing the board of financial mismanagement and poor leadership. For instance, the leader of the concerned farmers, Davis Jaire, told us the board has dubiously bought land for office building at 4.8 million kwacha, yet they have their own undeveloped land. TTA board chairperson Dixon Nyalugwe said whoever is misleading the farmers is just jealousy of the board members, and he said the board consults farmers before making any decision. We now go to sports news. Chairperson of the COVID-19 Task Force of the Football Association of Malawi fears that government could be compelled to withdraw its nod for football fans to physically watch games if there is no adherence to preventive measures. Chimango Muntali said this after observing that during test matches last week, social distancing and wearing of masks a development that could force government change hard to revert to allowing games only behind closed doors. Sambanda reports.
8 games have been arranged in various venues in all the regions during the first week of this year's Super League campaign, which starts on Saturday, 28th November, but authorities say the conduct of fans in adhering to COVID-19 preventive restrictions is of paramount importance because that's the key element which government will be monitoring. Football Association of Malawi's COVID-19 Task Force Chairperson Chimango Muntari says the pre-sale of entry tickets which Solom is implementing as one of the measures of controlling crowds is not the only option, but also enforcing the fans to wear masks as well as making certain there is social distancing in the terraces.
We need to make sure that we are loving our country, because if we don't do a good job in enhancing these, adhering to these preventive measures, we end up with another surge in cases, COVID-19 cases in Malawi, and that will result into another lockdown where we have people being pushed to stay home, no access to football matches. Even worse would be stopping football again. You love the game of football. You have a key responsibility to make sure that you adhere to the measures. We have no doubt that they're going to up their game, especially in areas that they didn't do well, of wearing, for example, masks as well as the social distancing.
Meanwhile, the Super League of Malawi Solom says security will be enforced during the games to make certain fans adhere to the preventive restrictions, as was the case during the test matches.
That's what we had time for in this edition of news, and before we go, a look at the headlines. Ombudsman probe finds over 70% resources for COVID-19 interventions spent on staff allowances. Parties in Dr. Mpinganjira Brabe case given 5 days to make submissions if the accused has a case to answer. And Speaker Kotani Harapis for psychosocial support for survivors of gender-based violence in the country. In sports news, Farm COVID-19 Task Force wants to withdraw node watching games physically if preventive measures are disregarded. Log on to our website for more on these and other stories. Remember to wash your hands frequently with soap to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Bye for now.